By sunrise, Emily Carter will be gone from this palace. The Alpha King's voice slipped through the carved oak door, calm enough to freeze the breath in her lungs. Emily stood motionless in the shadowed corridor, holding a small velvet box against her chest. Inside rested a silver compass engraved with the words, "Find your way back to me," the gift she had planned to give Adrian before tomorrow's ceremony. Through the narrow opening between the doors, she saw him at the head of the council table, dressed in black beneath the pale glow of the chandeliers. Vanessa Whitmore stood beside him, elegant in a white gown, one hand resting near a royal marriage contract sealed with crimson wax. Her father, Richard Whitmore, sat only a few feet away, watching Adrian with quiet satisfaction. Nathan Cole stood near the far wall, his posture unusually tense. "The kingdom will believe I chose you," Adrian continued. Vanessa smiled, but the expression did not reach her eyes. For the briefest moment, she glanced toward her father before lowering her gaze. Emily's fingers tightened around the box. She waited for Adrian to laugh, to tear the contract apart, to say this was another political performance required by men who feared an Omega standing beside their king. He did none of those things. Only yesterday, Adrian had found Emily alone in the royal library, dust on her cheek and moonlight across her hair. He had taken her hand where no one could see and pressed his lips gently against her knuckles. "One more night," he had whispered. "After tomorrow, you will never have to hide again." She had believed him. For nearly a year, she had believed every quiet promise spoken between shelves of forgotten books, every secret meeting beneath the garden arch, every moment when the feared Alpha King became simply Adrian in her presence. She had mistaken secrecy for protection. Now she understood it had only made her easier to erase. Richard leaned forward and asked whether the Omega would resist. Adrian's answer came after a silence that felt endless. "She will not be given the chance." Emily stepped away before her knees could fail her. The corridor seemed longer than it had an hour ago. Every portrait of a former king watching as she carried her breaking heart back toward the servants' wing. She did not run. Running would draw attention, and attention was dangerous when the most powerful man in the kingdom had already decided she must disappear. Inside her small room, she locked the door and placed the unopened gift on the table. Beside it lay a folded letter delivered that afternoon by the palace healer. Emily had been too nervous to read it before seeing Adrian. Now she broke the seal with trembling hands. The words blurred once, then sharpened. "The examination confirms what we suspected. You are carrying a child." Emily lowered herself onto the edge of the bed, one hand moving instinctively to her stomach. No one knew. Not Adrian. Not the council. Not Vanessa. A faint warmth answered beneath her palm, delicate as the first light before morning. Tears filled her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She looked toward the eastern window, where darkness still covered the forest beyond the palace walls. Adrian had promised that by sunrise she would be gone. Emily folded the healer's letter, slipped it inside her cloak, and rose. For once, the Alpha King would keep his word. Emily moved with the quiet precision of someone who understood that fear became useful only when given a task. She placed the unopened velvet box containing the silver compass on the table, then crossed to the narrow wardrobe and chose the plainest dress she owned. The dark blue wool would disappear beneath a servant's cloak, and the soft boots would make little sound against the stone floors. She packed one change of clothes, the healer's letter, a small pouch of coins, and the worn moonstone pendant that had belonged to her mother. Everything else remained behind. By morning, her room would look less like a place abandoned in panic and more like a life deliberately erased. A soft knock touched the door. "Emily." Nathan Cole's voice came from the corridor. The royal beta sounded unusually tense. "I need to speak with you." She froze with one hand on the leather satchel. Nathan had always treated her with respect, but he belonged to Adrian first. If she opened the door, the king would know she had heard. "I am not feeling well," she answered, forcing steadiness into her voice. "Come back tomorrow." Silence followed. Then Nathan lowered his voice. "I was ordered to escort you somewhere safe before dawn. There are men loyal to Whitmore in this hallway, so I cannot explain more through the door." Emily looked toward the narrow gap beneath it. Two shadows stood beyond Nathan, motionless and listening. Perhaps he had come to protect her. Perhaps Adrian had sent him to remove her quietly before the ceremony. After what she had heard, Those possibilities no longer felt different enough to risk. "I need a moment," she said. Nathan hesitated. "I will return with the king." His steps retreated, followed by the slower movement of the other men. Emily waited until Nathan's footsteps and the watching shadows had disappeared, then slipped outside. The royal library stood 2 floors below, connected to the oldest wing of the palace by a forgotten passage hidden behind a wall of astronomy books. Emily had discovered it months earlier while cataloging maps from the first Blackwood reign. According to the oldest plans, the tunnel passed beneath the eastern garden and ended near the river, nearly half a mile beyond the palace gates. The palace felt suspended between breaths. Guards stood at the main staircases, but servants still moved through the lower halls preparing for the morning ceremony. Emily carried a folded sheet beneath her cloak and kept her gaze lowered, looking like another maid with unfinished work. No one stopped her. In the library, moonlight fell across the shelves in long silver bars. She went directly to the astronomy section and pressed the carved star on the wooden frame. A hidden latch released with a quiet click. Before entering, Emily removed Adrian's ring from her finger. For months, its warmth had made her feel chosen even when the world was not allowed to know. Now it felt like a promise made only in darkness. She placed it on the reading table beside a single folded note. "You kept your promise. I am gone." From a locked cabinet, she took a small bundle of dried wolfsbane used by healers to dull a wolf's scent. She crushed it between her palms and rubbed the bitter leaves along the hem of her cloak. It would not hide her forever, but it might confuse the trackers long enough for the river to carry her trail away. The passage opened before her, narrow and black. Emily rested a hand over the life growing quietly within her. "We are not disappearing," she whispered. "We are choosing where we begin." She stepped inside and pulled the shelf closed behind her. At that exact moment, the first bell of dawn began to ring. Adrian knew something was wrong before Nathan finished speaking. The warning came as the first bell of dawn faded through the palace, leaving the corridors washed in cold gray light. "Emily would not open the door," Nathan said. "2 of Whitmore's men were watching the hallway. I told her I would return with you." Adrian stopped so suddenly that the guards behind him nearly collided. For one breath, he heard only the distant preparations for the ceremony and the hard rhythm of his own heart. Then he crossed the servants' wing with Nathan close behind. Emily's door stood unlocked. Her bed had not been slept in. The wardrobe was nearly empty, and a small velvet box rested on the table. Adrian opened it and found the silver compass she had meant to give him, engraved with the words, "Find your way back to me." "When did you last hear her voice?" he asked. "Shortly before dawn," Nathan replied. "I went to find you because I could not explain the plan while Whitmore's men were listening." The truth arrived with terrible clarity. Emily had heard something in the council chamber, perhaps enough to believe the worst. Adrian left the room and moved through the palace with the speed of instinct, following the faintest trace of her scent beneath the sharper bitterness of wolfsbane. It led him not toward the gates, but toward the royal library. The great room was empty, its chandeliers dimmed for morning. At the astronomy shelves, one section stood slightly crooked. Adrian pressed the carved star and watched the hidden passage open. On the reading table lay Emily's ring. Beneath it was a folded note. "You kept your promise. I am gone." The words seemed to narrow the world around him. He had spoken carefully in the council chamber because Richard Whitmore had agents everywhere. By sunrise, Emily Carter will be gone from this palace. The kingdom will believe I chose Vanessa. He had meant to send Emily under Nathan's protection to the northern estate while the false engagement exposed Whitmore's conspiracy. He had told himself there was no safe way to explain everything until she was beyond the palace walls. He had told himself that urgency gave him the right to decide for her. Now the empty passage answered him. "Open every river crossing," Adrian ordered. "Send riders north and east. No royal banners. No public announcement." Nathan remained beside the table, his expression strained. "There is something else. The palace healer came to me before dawn. She was searching for Emily." A cold stillness settled over Adrian. "Why?" Nathan lowered his voice. "She believes Emily is carrying your child." For the first time in years, the Alpha King had no command ready. His hand closed around the ring, and the bond inside his chest flared with sudden heat, then stretched painfully thin. Somewhere beyond the palace walls, Emily was still moving away from him. Adrian stepped into the hidden passage. 10 minutes later, trackers reached the river and found a servant's cloak tangled in the reeds. The wolfsbane's scent ended there. One guard quietly suggested that the current might have carried her downstream. Adrian stared at the dark water until the morning light turned it silver. "She is alive," he said. It was not hope. It was the only truth he would permit. Miles to the north, hidden beneath a canvas cover in a merchant wagon, Emily pressed both hands over her stomach as the distant howl of the royal wolves rolled through the forest. She closed her eyes but did not turn back. 5 winters passed, but Emily never stopped listening for royal wolves in the distance. The merchant wagon carried her north through 3 counties before freezing rain forced the travelers to seek shelter in the village of Silver Creek. By then, the strain of the journey had left her pale and trembling. Grace Miller, an elderly healer with kind brown eyes, found her. Sitting beneath the awning of a closed bakery with both hands wrapped protectively around her stomach. Grace asked no questions that Emily could not answer. She simply opened her home and said, "No woman should face a storm alone." Within weeks, every trace of Emily vanished beyond the northern border. The false trail at the river led south. The merchant records named no passengers, and the wolfsbane had erased the last thread of scent before the royal trackers reached Silver Creek. Months later, as snow covered the rooftops and wind pressed against the windows, Emily gave birth to a son. She named him Noah Carter. He had her chestnut hair, but when he opened his eyes, they shone with the unmistakable silver of the Blackwood line. Emily loved him before she had the strength to lift her head. She also feared what those eyes might reveal. Grace helped her build a quiet life. Emily studied herbs, learned to bring down fevers, and discovered that the warmth in her hands could calm pain more deeply than any medicine. Within 2 years, the abandoned mill house at the edge of Silver Creek became a small healing clinic. Farmers came with aching joints. Mothers brought frightened children. Rogues who expected judgment found clean blankets and warm soup instead. Emily never asked what rank they carried. She only asked where it hurt. Noah grew among shelves of dried lavender and jars of honey, a cheerful boy who believed every injured animal deserved a name. He knew nothing about palaces or mate bonds. When he asked about his father, Emily told him the truth in the gentlest form she could manage. "He was a man I once loved very much." Far to the south, Adrian refused to let the kingdom forget the woman it had driven away. He ended the false engagement with Vanessa Whitmore before the ceremony began. He opened protected shelters for displaced Omegas, removed council laws that treated them as dependents, and ordered every border village to provide care without demanding status or loyalty. The court called his reforms reckless. Adrian called them overdue. Each winter, he searched another region. Each spring, he returned without Emily. He kept her silver ring in the inner pocket of his coat, close enough to touch whenever regret became difficult to carry. Richard Whitmore remained beyond accusation, smiling through council meetings while every trail connected to his conspiracy disappeared. Yet from time to time, Nathan received and signed reports containing fragments of Whitmore account numbers, border routes, and names of secret messengers. No one knew who sent them, but Adrian ordered every page preserved. In Silver Creek, Emily felt the years soften the sharpest edges of her grief, but they never erased them. Then, on the first cold evening of Noah's 5th autumn, a stranger arrived at the clinic. He wore a traveler's coat and leaned heavily against the doorway, his face gray with exhaustion. Around his neck, just above the collar, a dark crescent-shaped mark pulsed beneath the skin. Emily recognized the symbol from a royal archive she had cataloged years ago. It belonged to the private seal of House Whitmore. The man caught her wrist before his strength failed. "They know about the boy," he whispered. Outside, beyond the clinic windows, black flags appeared on the road leading into Silver Creek. Emily knew the scent before the first rider reached the village square. Pine, winter air, and the faint metallic edge of royal power moved through Silver Creek like a memory she had spent 5 years trying not to breathe. Her hand tightened around the clinic doorframe. The flags appeared black from a distance, but as the riders drew closer, a silver wolf became visible at the center of each one. They belonged to the Royal Guard, not House Whitmore. Adrian had come. Grace guided the exhausted stranger toward a bed while Emily crossed the room and reached for Noah's coat. "We are leaving," she said. Noah looked up from the basket near the stove, where a small gray wolf pup rested beneath a blanket. But he is still scared. Grace will care for him. He only lets me touch him. Noah placed one warm hand against the pup's side, and a soft golden light flickered beneath his fingers. Emily's breath caught. His gift had appeared in small ways before, calming birds and easing Grace's headaches, but never this clearly. Outside, horses slowed on the muddy road. Villagers gathered beneath shop awnings as 12 royal guards entered the square. Adrian rode in the center of the formation, wearing a dark coat with neither a crown nor ceremonial armor. 5 years had sharpened his face and placed silver at his temples, but nothing could soften the presence that made every wolf nearby fall silent. Emily stepped backward. The bond she had buried stirred inside her, not broken, only sleeping. Adrian dismounted before his horse had fully settled. His gaze moved across the village, searching windows, doors, and faces. Then he turned toward the clinic. Their eyes met through the glass. For one suspended moment, Emily was 24 again, standing in a palace corridor with a gift in her hands and trust in her heart. Then Noah called her name, and the present returned. Adrian entered alone. The room seemed smaller around him. He stopped 6 feet from Emily, as though an invisible boundary had been drawn across the floor. His eyes moved over her face with quiet disbelief. Emily. She had imagined this moment in anger, in fear, and sometimes in dreams she refused to remember. She had never imagined he would say her name as if it were something sacred he had nearly forgotten how to speak. "Why are you here?" she asked. Nathan received another unsigned report 3 days ago. It named Silver Creek and described a Whitmore agent carrying an experimental toxin. His gaze shifted to the stranger on the bed, then to the dark crescent mark near the man's collar. The same mark appeared in 2 other border towns. Emily looked at the stranger. He said they know about the boy. Adrian's expression changed, but he did not ask the question forming behind his eyes. Instead, he looked toward Noah. The color left his face. Noah had Emily's hair and her gentle expression, but his silver eyes held the unmistakable light of the Blackwood bloodline. Adrian did not step closer. He did not claim him or demand an answer. The Alpha King slowly lowered himself to one knee, bringing his eyes level with the child's. "What is your name?" he asked. Noah studied him with open curiosity. "Noah Carter." Adrian swallowed. "That is a strong name." Noah tilted his head. "You smell familiar." Emily moved between them, but Noah reached around her and touched Adrian's hand. Golden light traveled across the child's fingers. Silver answered beneath Adrian's skin, and the air filled with the warm pulse of an awakened blood bond. Noah looked from Adrian to Emily. "Why does he feel like family?" Emily's heart seemed to stop beneath Noah's question, but Adrian answered before she could find the words. "Because I am part of your family," he said quietly. Noah looked at Emily, waiting for confirmation. She felt every eye in the clinic turn toward her, yet the only face that mattered was her son's. "He is your father," she said. The truth entered the room without thunder or ceremony, and somehow that made it heavier. Noah studied Adrian again, his silver eyes wide with wonder rather than fear. "Did you know about me?" Adrian's expression tightened. "Not until today." "Why not?" Noah asked. Emily drew a slow breath. Adrian could have defended himself. He could have explained the council, the false engagement, and the danger that had surrounded them. Instead, he lowered his gaze. "Because I made choices that hurt your mother, and she had every reason to leave." Emily felt the answer settle somewhere deep inside her, not as forgiveness, but as the first honest thing between them in years. Later, after Noah had gone upstairs with Grace, Adrian stood near the clinic stove while rain tapped softly against the windows. "Come back to the palace," he said. Emily's shoulders stiffened. "That did not take long. I am not ordering you. You never needed to raise your voice to make a decision for me." Adrian went still. "I was trying to save your life." "No," Emily said, keeping her voice low so Noah would not hear. "You were trying to control how I survived." The words left a long silence behind them. Adrian did not argue. "You are right." She had prepared herself for denial, authority, even anger. His agreement unsettled her more than any of those things. "The village is in danger," he continued. "My guards will follow your instructions. If you tell them to leave, they will leave. And you? I will remain outside unless you invite me in." He kept his word. That night, Adrian slept in the storage shed behind the clinic. The next morning, Emily found him repairing the bakery roof. By afternoon, he was carrying firewood for an elderly couple near the creek. He never used his title. He never asked Noah to call him father. He simply remained where they could see him. On the third day, Noah carried Adrian a cup of warm cider and sat beside him on the clinic steps. Inside, Emily examined the poisoned traveler again. He admitted he had worked as a courier for House Whitmore and had been exposed while stealing records from a hidden laboratory. Beneath the crescent mark, faint lines formed the symbol of an old blood registry. The toxin was designed to react only when it encountered both royal alpha blood and an omega healing gift, creating a visible mark that allowed Whitmore's agents to identify children like Noah. Emily rushed toward the door, but a royal messenger reached Adrian first, breathless and pale. A Whitmore scout was seen near the eastern road, the man said. Adrian ordered 2 guards to remain with Noah, then followed the messenger toward the tree line. Minutes later, Grace called from upstairs. One of the guards had collapsed from a sleeping draft hidden in his water flask. The second had been lured behind the clinic by a false cry for help. Emily ran outside. The cup of cider lay on its side, still warm. Wagon tracks crossed the muddy road, and Noah's moonstone pendant rested beside them. Emily found Adrian at the eastern road, standing beside the false messenger's abandoned horse. The man who had delivered the warning was gone, but his coat remained caught on a low branch, and inside its pocket Nathan discovered a brass token stamped with the private seal of House Whitmore. Adrian closed his hand around it, his face unreadable. "The scout was a diversion," he said. "They drew me away from Noah." Emily looked toward the wagon tracks cutting through the wet ground. Fear pressed against her ribs, but she forced herself to study what remained. The wheels were narrow, designed for speed, and one hoofprint carried a crescent-shaped shoe used by Whitmore. "Couriers. They are heading north," she said. Nathan returned from the clinic with a folded message tied beneath Noah's scarf. Adrian opened it carefully. Richard Whitmore demanded that the Alpha King surrender the throne before midnight, withdraw every protection granted to Omegas, and name House Whitmore guardian of the royal bloodline. If Adrian refused, Noah would be taken beyond the northern border, where no royal law could reach him. Emily read the message twice. Where would Richard keep him until then? She asked. "The Winter Palace," a woman answered from behind them. Vanessa Whitmore stepped from a gray carriage parked beneath the trees. She wore no jewelry, and the confidence Emily remembered from the council chamber had been replaced by exhaustion. Adrian moved between her and Emily. "Why are you here?" Vanessa held out a leather folder sealed with the Whitmore crest. "Because the unsigned reports were mine." Nathan's eyes narrowed. Vanessa explained that for 5 years she had sent account numbers, border routes, and names of secret messengers whenever she could do so without alerting her father. The latest report had named Silver Creek because she had discovered a registry linking Noah's bloodline to the toxin. "I was too late to warn you directly," she said. "My father changed his plan after he realized someone inside his household was helping the crown." Emily opened the folder. Inside were copies of hidden payments, forged border orders, and letters written during the week before she vanished. One letter contained a threat against an unnamed Omega in the royal palace. Another described a plan to force Adrian into marriage by turning the council against him. Emily's hands went cold. "You knew about the promise?" Vanessa lowered her gaze. "I knew it was meant to deceive my father. I did not understand what it would cost you." She revealed that Adrian had agreed to let the kingdom believe he had chosen Vanessa so Richard would sign documents proving his betrayal. Emily was supposed to be taken under guard to the Winter Palace until the council could act. "He believed secrecy would protect you," Vanessa said. Emily looked at Adrian. "And you believed I did not deserve the truth." Adrian accepted the words without defense. "I believe fear gave me the right to choose for you." It did not. The explanation did not erase 5 years of absence, but it gave the wound its true name. Adrian stepped closer, then stopped several feet away. "Tell me what you need." Emily closed the folder. "I need my son home." "Then you lead." Nathan unfolded a map of the Winter Palace, but Emily recognized the older passages better than any guard. She had cataloged the original plans years ago. A service tunnel ran beneath the eastern greenhouse and opened near the private nursery. Adrian placed the royal signet and the map in her hands. "No hidden orders," he said. "No decisions made behind your back." Emily pointed toward the northern gate. Vanessa returns first and keeps Richard occupied. Nathan takes the guards to the west entrance. Adrian comes with me through the greenhouse. Adrian bowed his head. Your plan. My choice, Emily corrected. Far to the north, Noah stood at a frosted window inside the winter palace and whispered to himself, Mother always finds the lost. The winter palace rose from the northern ridge beneath a silver moon, its glass greenhouse glowing faintly against the snow. Emily entered through the service tunnel with Adrian close behind, every step measured, every breath quiet. The stone passage smelled of damp earth and old cedar. She remembered the narrow turn beneath the eastern wall and the hidden stair that opened near the private nursery. At the final door, Adrian reached for the latch, but Emily placed her hand over his. I go first, she whispered. He nodded. No command. No argument. Only trust. The nursery beyond was empty except for a small wooden horse on the rug and Noah's coat folded over a chair. Emily pressed the coat to her chest, then noticed a faint golden shimmer near the window. Noah had left a trail only she would recognize. They followed it into the old throne chamber, where Richard Whitmore stood beside a circular table carved with royal symbols. Noah sat in a high-backed chair nearby, frightened but unharmed. Vanessa stood at the far end of the room, holding the council. Records against her chest. Mother, Noah called. Emily crossed the chamber, but Richard lifted the royal seal in his hand. One more step, and the council will hear that the boy was taken by an Omega seeking the throne. Adrian moved forward. Release him. Richard smiled. Surrender your crown. The room fell silent. Emily looked at Adrian, expecting hesitation. Instead, he removed the black signet from his finger and placed it on the stone table. The crown is yours to argue over, he said. My family is not. Richard's confidence faltered. Vanessa opened the records. The council already knows the truth. At that moment, Nathan entered with 3 elders from the royal court. Behind them, the doors remained open, revealing royal guards standing beside Whitmore's own men. Vanessa had already ordered the household guard to stand down, and the elders had formally suspended Richard's authority. No one in the palace would obey him now. The signed letters, records of hidden payments, forged border orders, and false council decrees were laid across the table one by one. Richard's own words became the walls closing around him. Noah slipped from the chair and ran to Emily. She dropped to her knees and held him so tightly that the 5 lost years seemed to gather inside that single embrace. Adrian remained several feet away, his eyes fixed on them, waiting. You can come closer, Noah said. Adrian crossed the distance slowly. Before he reached them, Richard spoke again, his voice bitter. You would throw away a kingdom for an Omega who abandoned you. Adrian turned toward the council. She did not abandon me. She escaped a future I tried to decide without her. His voice carried through the chamber, steady and unguarded. I called it protection because I was too proud to call it fear. I believe power gave me the right to choose for her. It did not. Emily felt the truth move through the room more strongly than any royal decree. Adrian lowered himself to one knee before her, not as a king claiming his mate, but as a man accepting the weight of what he had done. You owe me nothing, he said. Not forgiveness. Not a return. Not even another chance. Noah reached for Adrian's hand. Golden light warmed the space between them, soft and bright. Emily placed her hand over theirs. Outside, the first edge of dawn appeared beyond the frozen windows, and for the first time, Adrian did not ask her to stay. He simply waited for her choice. Emily did not answer Adrian in the throne chamber. She looked at Noah, at the elders holding Richard's records, and at the pale morning gathering beyond the windows. Then she gave the only promise she was ready to make. We are going home to Silver Creek. Adrian accepted the words without protest. He did not ask whether home meant forever. He arranged a carriage for Emily and Noah, then followed at a respectful distance with Nathan and 2 guards. Richard was formally removed from the royal council and placed under investigation, while Vanessa remained behind to testify and surrender the remaining Whitmore records. By the time the carriage reached Silver Creek, the village bells were ringing. Grace stood outside the clinic with tears in her eyes, and neighbors filled the road, relieved to see Noah safe. Adrian remained near the final carriage while Emily carried her son inside. He did not cross the doorway until she turned and invited him. The weeks that followed were quieter than any royal ceremony. Adrian returned to the capital only when the council required his presence, and each time he came back without banners. He helped repair the clinic roof, learned which herbs Noah was allowed to touch, and listened when Emily spoke. He never asked for the silver ring. He never called her his Luna. He simply kept showing up. Trust returned slowly, not like lightning, but like warmth entering a cold room 1 degree at a time. When the council completed its investigation and asked Adrian to reclaim the throne, he refused until new laws were written. Emily traveled to the capital as a witness, not as a bride. She stood before the same council that had once treated an Omega as a political inconvenience and placed 5 conditions on the table. Omegas would be allowed to hold council seats. Mate bonds could not be used to force marriage or claim guardianship. Every border shelter would receive permanent royal protection. Children would belong to their families, not to bloodlines or titles. No ruler could remove someone from a home in the name of protection without that person's consent. Adrian signed each condition before the elders could object. "The kingdom does not need my authority more than it needs their freedom," he said. Months later, the palace opened its doors for the first public council led by both Alphas and Omegas. Emily arrived with Noah beside her and Grace walking proudly behind them. The servants who remembered the quiet librarian bowed, but Emily asked them to stand. She was no longer hiding in corridors, and she would not allow anyone else to lower their eyes for her comfort. At sunset, Adrian found her in the royal library. The silver compass rested on the reading table, where he had placed it after finding it in her room 5 years earlier. He had kept it safe, untouched by time. Emily opened the velvet box, lifted the compass, and placed it in his hand. "You found your way back," she said. Adrian looked at her carefully. "Only because you left me a path worth following." From his coat, he removed her ring and set it between them. He did not reach for her hand. "This belongs to you, whether you wear it or not." Emily studied the small circle of silver, remembering the night she had believed love required secrecy. Then she slipped it onto her finger herself. The next morning, there was no announcement of ownership, no command before the court, and no promise made behind a closed door. Adrian waited at the palace steps while sunlight spread across the stone. Noah ran ahead and took his hand. Emily approached more slowly. Adrian held out his other hand, leaving the space between them open. "Will you walk beside me?" he asked. Emily looked at the man who had once chosen for her and saw the man who had learned to wait. She placed her hand in his. "Beside you," she said, "never behind you." Together, they entered the great hall as the doors opened to the morning light. Thank you so much for staying with us until the very end of this story. We'd love to hear your thoughts. What was your favorite moment, and what message or lesson did you take away from Emily and Adrian's journey? Share your opinion in the comments below and join the conversation with fellow story lovers. If you enjoyed this tale, please give the video a like, share it with your friends, and subscribe to Alpha's Regret Stories. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss our next exciting story filled with romance, drama, betrayal, and unforgettable twists. See you in the next story.